Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. Today we're going to be looking at a rogue druid multi-class build. Now, up front, I'm just going to say this character isn't going to be as good in combat as some of the other multi-classes we've done. And it's not like you're going to be bad in combat. You've still got a bunch of rogue levels, you can sneak attack, etc. But if you look at wild shaping, most of the animal forms use natural weapons, and in order to sneak attack, you're going to need finesse weapons or ranged weapons, but certainly not natural weapons. So you're not going to be wild shaping in combat, and you're not going to have the full amount of sneak attack dice that like a pure rogue would have. So you're not going to be as strong there either. But where you will be very, very good is in the exploration pillar of play. And not only will you be good, because most rogues are pretty good at that anyways, but you're going to be able to allow your allies to be decent at it as well. And to me, this is pretty important because if you've ever played a rogue, you have probably had this experience where your character is fine. You're built to be sneaky and stealthy. That's not the issue. The issue is you have a paladin in full plate mail with a shield, and he's clomping around with disadvantage on all his stealth rolls, and he is terrible. And it would be bad enough if it was just him. You've also got that great weapon fighter, and he's also wearing full plate mail, clomping around at disadvantage. And he's got 3 different great weapons and probably like a dozen javelins, because for some reason they always use javelins, even though javelins are terrible. It's because they use strength, but whatever. The point is, these guys are almost built from the ground up to be the exact opposite of your character. They are engineered to undermine everything you are trying to do. But at least if you have things like guidance and pass without trace, you can help them to not be completely terrible and give away your location every time you try to do something. It's that, or you end up splitting the party, which of course always puts your rogue in extreme danger because now you don't have anybody there to support you. So I do think that there's some real benefits here. Also, druids have a really nice spell list. You've got access to some heals, you've got some summons, and especially these are abilities that the rogue just normally wouldn't have access to. But the rogue's actually really good with this kind of stuff because of cunning action. You could summon animals or conjure animals, sorry, and then use your cunning action to hide on the same turn type of thing, right? And now it's going to be harder for somebody to pick you out and attack you and cause you to lose concentration on your spell because you're hiding. And that just gives you a lot more options. And you're not going to want to be like a primary healer on this character. I still see you being a mostly rogue with this type of build. I'm looking at probably 3 to 6 levels of druid. 3 is going to give me my second level spells, which will give me pass without trace. 6 will give me third level spells, and will also give me my second level subclass ability for druids. You might even want to go 7 or 8 if you want 4th level spells and maybe another feat or ASI, but I don't know that that's so necessary. Another nice thing about this is you don't really need to have a high wisdom. If you have a starting wisdom of 14, that's probably okay, and 16 is going to be more than fine. Because, Fairy Fire gives them a dex save and you want a high DC for that kind of stuff, but it is an AoE. But the fact is, most of your spells, like your heals, whether you healed somebody for 5 points with a healing word or a 7-point healing word isn't really important. The important thing is that you healed them and brought them back up and got them back in the combat. The extra 2 hit points is almost irrelevant. Your summons don't care how many wisdom mod points you have. Your pass without trace doesn't care about it. Guidance doesn't care about it. Druidcraft doesn't care about it. So, if you cast, let's say, Dark Vision, maybe you went with a variant human or you went a halfling and you don't have Dark Vision on your race. Dark Vision doesn't care about your wisdom mod. So I don't think that wisdom mod is going to be as big a detriment as you might think. If you wanted to max your dex and just, maybe you started with 16 wisdom and you just leave it there for the duration, I think that's probably going to be fine. There's also nothing wrong with maxing it out, by the way, but, I think it's going to be fine the way it is. So when I was looking at it, there was really 2 druid circles that kind of stood out to me, and one was the circle, Circle of Shepherd, there we go, and the other one was the Circle of Dreams. Now, the Circle of Dreams had some nice stealth type stuff at level 6, and it's got an extra heal ability at level 2, but in general, I'm not looking to be a healer. Yeah, I might have healing spirits, I might have healing word, but those are mostly just if the main healer goes down, I can bring him up with healing word. If we're healing out of combat and I'm not really doing much with my spell slots, I can be like, hey, I'll throw down the healing spirits and we can form a conga line or a human centipede or whatever else we want to do, and just like run back and forth through the area and just get healed up, right? But my preferred one is definitely the Circle of Shepherd. And I did an entire video on Circle of Shepherd. At this point, I feel like I'm starting to fanboy for Circle of Shepherd. But it is my favorite of the Druid circles. Mostly because I really like the summoning spells, and it's the one that gives you the best bonuses to summoning spells. But it also has some other nice abilities too. So if we look at Circle of Shepherd in a little more depth, I'm only going to cover the level 2 and level 6 abilities. If you want to go higher, you can. But we're really looking at more low-end Druid abilities combined with higher levels of Rogue, right? But at level 2, you're going to get your Totem Spirit. As a bonus action, you can magically summon an incorporeal spirit to a point you can see within 60 feet of you. The spirit creates an aura of 30 feet radius around it, which is pretty big. It counts as neither a creature nor an object, though it has the spectral appearance of the creature it represents, which is nice. It means that it can't really be killed. As a bonus action, you can move the spirit up to 60 feet to a point you can see, which is a lot of movement, so that's good too. The spirit persists for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Well, once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. The effect of the spirit's aura depends on the type of spirit you summon from the options below. Your options are the bear spirit, the hawk spirit, and the unicorn spirit. Now, usually I'm going to go with bear, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But there are circumstances where all three are pretty good. Especially unicorn, it's kind of a close second, but I prefer the bear generally. So bear, what's it going to do? Each creature of your choice in the aura, when the spirit appears, gains temporary hit points equal to 5 plus your druid level. In addition, you and your allies gain advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws while in the aura. Now, the strength checks and saving throws isn't a big deal. I mean, maybe you have a grappler in your party and you can help him out a little bit with that. Maybe you get hit with like an Evard's Black Tentacles, or you're fighting something that grapples, in which case it can still be pretty useful. But mostly I'm looking at the temporary hit points. And the reason is because there's no limit to how many creatures you can hit as long as they're within that aura. So you could, say, cast a Conjure Animals, drop all your woodland beings down next to you, and then as your bonus action, conjure this, and give your party, yourself, and all your conjured spirits, which are in the form of animals, so not really animals, temporary hit points. And even if you only have, like, say, 6 levels of Druid, that's going to be 11 temporary hit points. That's a pretty decent number of temporary hit points, especially if you give them to enough creatures. So I really like that ability. Spirit of the Hawk. When a creature makes an attack roll against a target within its spirit's aura, you can use your reaction to grant advantage to that attack roll. In addition, you and your allies have advantage on wisdom perception checks while in the aura. Now, this isn't bad, I guess, but you're trading your reaction to give somebody advantage on one attack. And I don't think that's necessarily great either. There are circumstances, maybe you've got, another rogue in the party and he wouldn't be able to sneak attack otherwise, but you give him advantage and now he's able to sneak attack. It can be really good in those kind of situations. I think that it could be decent if you have, like, maybe you conjured some animals and you have a wolf, and the wolf's going to try to knock somebody prone. Giving it advantage could help out there. But in general, especially since I have a bunch of rogue levels, I would rather use my reaction to make an attack of opportunity or something along those lines. So I don't think that the Hawk is terrible. I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as Bear. But there are times when I might want to use it. The Unicorn Spirit. You and your allies gain advantage on all ability checks to detect creatures in the Spirit's aura, which is kind of redundant with the Hawk, by the way. In addition, if you cast a spell that restores hit points to any creature inside or outside the aura, each creature of your choice in the aura also regains hit points equal to your druid level. So, if you cast like a healing word, you heal somebody for 4 hit points, everybody you choose within your aura could also get those 4 hit points, which obviously just allows you to take single target, low healing, low impact spells and really turn them into a big impact. Especially if you have a bunch of summoned creatures, you could heal a ton of them. I think one nice thing about this is it's a little more, let's say you decide to summon the creatures in the first round, and some of them take damage, you can now do this in the next round and heal them up. But in general, I would rather just give my summons temporary hit points. And that's because your summons tend to be pretty weak. You don't have a lot of hit points. And, you know, it's not like they go unconscious when they're reduced to 0. Like if you look at Conjure Animals, it says that any of them reduced to 0 just disappear, right? They're not unconscious. They're not making death saving throws. They're not bleeding out. They're just gone. So you can't really pick them up by healing them once they're already down. And because of the low hit point total, I'd rather just give them the temporary hit points usually, because they're going to get one shot by a lot of stuff anyways, right? So healing them back isn't going to be as good. However, I do think that if you want to heal a bunch of party members, and especially if you want to scale up a spell, like let's say you cast Cure Wounds, but you decide to cast it with a 3rd or 4th level spell slot, and use this to heal everybody in the party, I think that can be a lot more advantageous. So there are times when I might like it, especially if I'm upscaling my heals. But if I just want to give everybody temporary hit points, that's usually going to be the one I prefer. At level 6, you're going to get Mighty Summoner. Starting at 6th level, beasts and fae that you conjure are more resilient than normal. Any beast or fae summoned or created by a spell that you cast gains the following benefits. The creature appears with more hit points than normal, gaining 2 extra hit points per hit die. Not bad, you know. The damage from its natural weapons is considered magical for the purposes of overcoming immunity and resistance to non-magical attacks and damage, which is actually really nice, because that's one problem we have with summons. As we start fighting more and more powerful things, our summons just become a lot less useful because they just can't hurt a lot of stuff. But in your case, they don't have to worry about that. A bunch of badgers or rabid wolverines or whatever else you conjured can still overcome immunities and resistances to those types of damage. So I think that's pretty decent. I also like that it's not temporary hit points they get from this. They gain extra hit points equal to 2 times their hit die, which means there's no conflict with your Bear Spirit totem. You can give them extra hit points by summoning them, and then give them temporary hit points on top of that, and just make them a little more resilient. So I think that that's a really good blend. Now, if you look at the rogue subclasses, I'm probably going to go with Scout. And part of this is just thematically, because Scout kind of has that outdoors type of feel, right? And, you know, it's a good fit for a Druid. But also, you've got some pretty decent abilities. So if we look at the Rogue in general, at level 3, you're going to get the ability to move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. This is pretty decent if you're looking to maintain concentration on some spells and just not get hit. You know, just gives you basically like a free disengage, essentially. And movement on top of that. So nothing wrong with that. Also at level 3, you gain proficiency with nature and survival skills if you don't already have it. And your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability checks you make that use either of those proficiencies. So basically you've got expertise on both of them, which means you don't have to take them on your Druid, you can get them for free, and you're going to be exceptionally good at them, which is even better. Because expertise is one of the main draws of Rogue, in my opinion. Rogues have a lot of great abilities, and expertise is certainly one of them. Your next subclass ability is going to be Superior Mobility at level 9. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. This could be really nice if you're a halfling especially, but even if you're not. If you have a climbing or swimming speed, this increases as well. At level 13, you get Ambush Master, and you have advantage on initiative rolls. In addition to that, the first creature you hit on the first round of combat becomes easier for you and your allies to strike. Attack rolls against that creature have advantage until the start of your next turn. So this is pretty handy as well. You're already going to have a good dexterity. You're going to have advantage on your initiative rolls. And so if you go fast enough and you shoot somebody with a bow, for example, then all the subsequent attacks that round are going to have advantage against it. And that can be a real difference maker. So I really like that ability as well. It is your 13th level ability. And if you took your 6 levels of Druid, you're only going to get up to 14 levels of Rogue. So it's going to be pretty late game, right? But, you know, that's okay. It's still pretty good. As far as like, I've already mentioned some of the spells I really like. We already mentioned like Pass Without Trace. We mentioned some of the summoning spells. I mentioned Dark Vision and some of the heals. Obviously there's Guidance. But just in general, things like Fairy Fire are excellent spells. Like Druids actually have, Good Berry is an excellent spell. And because of the fact that you have a lot more like mobility and whatnot because of cunning action, it allows you to get a lot more out of these type of spells than you might otherwise get. And I find that just in general, Druids have a really, really nice spell list, but especially in the first couple tiers. Their tier 3 and tier 4 spells are still pretty good, but it's really like your first, second, maybe up to 4th and 5th level spells are where you're really, really shining, in my opinion, as a Druid. And so you're going to have access to a lot of those things, and you're still going to be able to, have all your rogue skills. Now, a lot of this you could get from Ranger, which would give you a second attack, although your spell progression is going to be slower. But one thing, I already did a Ranger Rogue multi-class video, so we're not going to retread that again. But B, the Ranger's not going to give you the wild shapes, and I don't want to downplay the fact that wild shaping out of combat can be pretty nice. It's a really good way to do stealthy type of things. And rather than you sneaking down a hallway and hoping not to get caught, you can just turn into a spider or something. And even if somebody does see you, you're just a spider. They're not going to care probably. So I really like those kind of abilities. Even if you're spying on somebody in a more urban setting, for example, you could turn into a dog or a cat and just pretend to curl up in the corner and fall asleep. Meanwhile, you're spying on everything they say, and nobody thinks anything of it because you're just a dog or a cat, just some stray cat sleeping on a garbage can, or so they think. And I think there's a lot of real potential there. I wanted to mention also on the subject of the various different wild shapes that Xanathar's has an excellent set of tables for wild shaping, going through all the different terrains, all the different CRs, and as well as giving you if it has a fly or a swim ability. And I even use it a lot if I'm casting conjure animals and stuff, right? If the DM wants to be thematic, or I will if I'm being thematic, if he's like, hey, I want 8 CR1 creatures, and you're in a forest, I might be like, okay, well, what do we got here? We got boars, constrictor snakes, elks, giant badgers, a bunch of other giant animals, panthers, wolves, Now you're like, okay, I'm gonna look on this list. I think that a giant badger or elk or giant owl, those might be appropriate, right? And then I'll give them one of those as the creature type. And it saves me from having to look into a lot of different places. I can just look in this book, see what's appropriate, and grab something from there. So I really like that. So basically, just to sort of wrap things up, I think that in general, rogues have some really nice abilities. Rogue is an excellent base class with which to multi-class out of as well. And I think that Druid has some really good stuff. And unlike, say, Wizard, I'm not saying you can't multi-class as a Wizard, but we all know that the real strength of the Wizard is their high-end spells. And it's not that their low-end spells are bad either. Wizards have, as I've said many times, the best spell list in the entire game. But it's really when you start getting those 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells that Wizards really start to distinguish themselves from everybody else. Things like Force Cage and Maze and Simulacrum. Even Clone can be really nice, Demiplane just has so much cool utility. Not to mention, of course, the Wish spell. So, Wizards have a lot of stuff at high level, which makes me kind of a little more hesitant to multi-class out of them. With Druid, though, I feel the 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells are decent, but it's really the first early level spells, those first 4 or 5 levels, where the real meat of the Druid spell list is, in my opinion, and you're going to be able to get all of that. So I really think that it's a pretty decent multi-class. Like I said, you're not looking to do a lot of damage yourself so much, although you can. Sneak attack is still excellent. But you're looking to use some summons and some conjurations. You've got some healing utility. You've got some buffing. You've got some debuffing. And then you've also got all the rogue abilities on top of that. I think that it's actually pretty strong. And the reason I sort of favor the rogue over the druid, for the level split, is because I feel that rogues just, things like reliable talent are excellent, right? Things like, uncanny dodge and evasion and stuff are really just going to allow you to be a lot harder to hit and a lot easier to make concentration rolls. Oh, speaking of which, though, I almost forgot Absorb Elements. One of the best first level spells there is, and also extremely helpful for you avoiding having to make hard concentration checks. So that's just another great gem from the Druid spell list at low levels. So I feel like it's got a lot going for it. As far as feats, you can always take Warcaster if you want. I think Resilient Con or Warcaster both make a lot of sense. If I don't have Dark Vision though, I think Skulker might be a good choice. Depends if I'm planning on casting Dark Vision a lot. But I might not want to use up the spell slots all the time, right? So Skulker has potential. I feel like Alert's not a bad choice, especially as you get to higher levels. If you have advantage on your initiative rolls, plus you have a high dex, plus you have Alert, like, you know, you're going to be able to use your ambusher ability all the time. But like I mentioned earlier, if you've got 6 levels of Druid and 13 levels of Rogue, it's really just 19th and 20th level play where that's even coming online. So I don't know that I'd really worry about it much until I was like at those high levels. You're going to be pretty fast as it is. I don't think that Alert is as big a deal on this as it is on some of the others. If you're using a ranged weapon, then Warcaster and Resilient Con, while nice, aren't quite as big of a deal either. I like Observant. If I'm going to be doing a lot of scouting type stuff, then having the nice passive wisdom and thus the passive perception is going to be really, really handy. So that it'd be one I'd definitely be looking to pick up, probably with one of my earliest feats. I mean, I'm probably going to max my dex, then start picking up things like Observant. And like I said, maybe Skulker if I actually need to be able to see in the dark because I didn't take Wood Elf or something like that. As far as races, I mean, Halfling's pretty good. Obviously, like Ghostwise Halfling is an excellent choice as well. Variant Human, of course, starting with a feat is always great. You could start with Skulker, for example. And also Wood Elf. Wood Elf is going to give you proficiency with the long sword, short sword, longbow, and short bow. I'm probably not going to be using a long sword or a short sword. I don't really care about those options. But using a bow could be exactly what I'm looking for, because it's going to allow me to stay back, get in some good range damage, and use my sneak attack from that, and avoid a lot of concentration checks. So I think there's some real potential there. The other nice thing is it works really well with your ability to use your reaction and move up to half your range or half your distance without provoking opportunity attacks if somebody ends in close to you. Because if they see you using a bow, a lot of times people will try to like get in on top of you and then force you to move or shoot with disadvantage, but you don't have to worry about it. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna shoot you with a bow. Oh, somebody's trying to charge me and engage me? Use my reaction, back out. No problem. So I think that's definitely the place that I would look towards playing, right? I'm going to be using some spells in combat here and there. I'm not going to have a ton of spell slots, but I'm going to have enough that it's going to be impactful. I'm going to be using my heals as needed. Hopefully I don't have to use them at all or very minimally. You know, but if you need to, you need to. Nothing wrong with that. You've got them. That's what they're there for, right? I'm going to be using things like guidance anytime I have to make, like if I'm trying to detect traps, disarm traps, find a secret door, anything like that. I'm going to be using guidance, and then I'm going to be making that roll. If I'm going to be trying to sneak and do things like that, I'm going to be using Pass Without Trace for spell slots. And then I'm going to be looking in combat to sneak attack, as well as maybe provide summons if I think it's going to be a key combat. And just one quick note on summons. In general, I prefer to have lots of weaker summons than one powerful one if I'm given the choice on like conjure woodland beings, conjure animals, those type of spells. And the reason is, like if you look at the CR1 quarter creatures, you could have 8 of them, or you could have 4 CR1 halves, right? But a 1 CR1 quarter creature and a 1 CR1 half creature, the 1 half isn't twice as powerful as the 1 quarter. It's like 10% more powerful usually, right? So I'd rather have double of them because I'm just getting a lot more bang for my buck. And then if I'm giving them all temporary hit points, I'm spreading that out, and I'm applying that to even more creatures. If they're getting bonus hit points when I summon them, those hit points are being applied to more and more creatures. And I just feel like it's, you know, probably better in that sense if they're looking to, especially if you're absorbing single attacks. Like if you're fighting something with an AoE attack, it's going to clear them all out. That's not great. But honestly, it probably would have killed your CR1 creatures too, so that's not necessarily the end of the world. But if they're having to like single target these things down, I'd way rather have 8 cannon fodder than 2 cannon fodder, you know? So I think that's better. Also, just the sheer number of attacks that it's giving to our side, the number of actions, is so impactful. So anyways, those are my thoughts on this multi-class. I feel like it's pretty good, and if you're in a combination of like combat and role play and exploration, and like you're kind of getting into all the different pillars of play, then I think this class will really excel. If it's just a pretty much just like all dungeon crawls and just all combat all the time, then there might be stronger ones, but I think this would be very fun to play. And like I said, it's not like it's bad either. You still got all the functionality of a rogue. You're just going to be, behind what your full progression would be if you were just straight rogue. And then you've got, all the advantages that Druid's bringing on top of that too. So anyways, I do think it's fun and an interesting idea, and I see a lot of potential with it. So I just thought I'd make a video about it. Anyways, that's everything. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. And mostly, as always, leave me your comments in the comment section. I look forward to reading them all. Thank you very much.